Nikki, did you have something you were in the process of passing out? Why don't you complete that, and then we'll start. I didn't get it. Okay.
That's just the one that I think goes to, this is homeless services, so this actually goes to the, unless you want to.
Don't the council people get one?
Well, it's the same thing as the big one, but for notes. So we haven't been given, we've been saving notes.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know what they gave us.
I don't. Oh, okay, fine. Okay, the Finance and Budget Committee meeting on the 2012 to 13 budget will come back to order, and I heard a good question, which is whether we have any budget hearings tomorrow, and the answer is no. However, I would remind everybody that at 1 o'clock tomorrow afternoon, we do have the special meeting of the Finance and Budget Committee for the purpose of hearing the D-tax legislation, which we hope is now ready to go. So I would ask everybody to please be here for that. I'm going to act as if this afternoon session is a separate session and ask the clerk whether anybody has signed in for public comment.
Yes, Mr. Chair. A Tim Walters has signed in to address council.
Mr. Walters, please step forward, and you have 3 minutes to address the committee. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairman Miller, members of council. Good afternoon. My name is Tim Walters, board chair of the Metanoia Project. An overnight hospitality center opened during the winter to serve homeless individuals who, for a variety of reasons, will not go to our regular shelters. Earlier this year, we requested $25,000 in funding from Cuyahoga County to assist us with our work. I understand this was not included in this budget, and I'm here to request that it be put in. This year we will open on November 18th with the intent of remaining open each weekend, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday until mid-April. Our hours are from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m., and we will be located in St. Malachi's former school at 25th and Washington. Our target population is those we term shelter resistance, many of which live on our streets in a variety of circumstances that are less than ideal most of the time and just plain health-threatening during our frigid Cleveland winters. We provide a meal, a link to resources, community, conversation, and a place to sleep. Last year, we averaged about 50 guests a night, mostly men. Our primary costs are staff salaries and rent. We have a number of dedicated volunteers that provide meals. Our nightly costs average approximately $800, which averages out to about $15 per person served. All of our 9 staff come from the ranks of those we serve. Most are formerly homeless themselves and or have experienced and recovered from various forms of substance abuse and addictions. This not only adds to our ability to relate and respond to our guests, but gives us double value for expenses incurred by providing staff with needed resources to move forward. 2 questions that are commonly asked. Why would those we serve not go to regular shelters? There are a variety of answers, but most come down to fear and or an inability to cope with the size and structure of regular shelters combined with a high incidence of mental health problems. Also, couples must separate when they go into regular shelters. This is not meant to be a negative comment on regular shelters, as we respect and value their work. However, it is a fact that a significant number of homeless simply will not use them. What makes us different from regular shelters? We are smaller and able to build up and maintain relationships with all who come to us. As such, we, staff and volunteers, are able to spend personal time with our guests, building up their own self-esteem and a sense of trust in us. This results in their listening, responding, and receiving needed services from agencies that partner with us at the center. By the end of last year's season, 12 of our guests found housing. Another 7 enrolled in substance abuse programs, and we have been told that our efforts continue to have impact throughout the year. We also provide a 6-week life skills and coping program for those who chose to enroll in it. We believe that we are both unique and effective. We have and continue to reach a subset of our homeless population, providing basic shelter while linking them with resources and the means to eventually move from their homeless condition. We ask that you favor us at $25,000 requested. We will put it to good use. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Ms. Clerk, has anybody else signed in?
Mr. Chairman, no one else has signed in to speak.
Okay, thank you very much. I would like to point out to everybody that in the morning session we did spend a fair amount of time talking about policy and execution issues not directly related to the budget, and I'm not going to cut anybody off, but please be mindful of the need to be focused on the task at hand. I would like to spend a couple of moments on process. Yesterday I passed out a sheet regarding some of the decision items that we had heard so far. In our discussion yesterday, I heard that people wanted to have the opportunity to consider everything before making decisions. So I'm not going to try to make any decisions today. But if anybody wants to make any comments at this point on those decision items, we can certainly do that now, or else we can do that a little bit farther down in the future.
Just a question, yes. Mr. Chair. Who's made the recommendations on the decision items?
Those are my personal recommendations. You were not here for this part, so let me go over it a little bit. What I hope to do is to try to find consensus and narrow down the areas where there might be decisions that need to be made. So I passed out the sheet that provided a number of recommendations, and I asked everybody to look at that and to get back to me today and tell me if there are recommendations that you want further discussion about. And I was hoping that, acting like a consent agenda, that some items at least would be cleared and that everybody agreed with that, and then those decisions would factor into the next version that we're going to come out with on November 14th. However, in yesterday's discussion, some members said that they would like to hear from all the departments first so that they could factor in things relating to priority in terms of making decisions as to what they might want to fund and might not want to fund. So as a result of that, we're not going to try to make any decisions today. But I also said that for just a sense of getting to where some people are at, if anybody wanted to step forward with comments about any of the decision items, I would want to hear that. Yes.
You would like to hear that now?
If you wish, yes. Okay.
The first thing that jumps out at me is the prosecutor gaming division, where you said they want additional funds for the gaming division. What I understand is the Attorney General state offices typically, or it's not unusual for the AGs to step up and handle that. that's within the scope of the state. So my recommendation from this person would be no, because at first there's yet to be determined what that will involve, and secondly, it's usually the state that would be handling the gaming.
Okay.
Oh, and one more thing, the Planning Commission also had some decision items that I don't see on here, so maybe we want to get that incorporated in before this budget process is over.
Yes, we should look at those. I did not include them because the Planning Commission, when they presented to us, did not specifically make requests for additional items, and so, but that doesn't mean that they can't be considered. We're not limited to what's specifically presented to the committee. I think there will be some cases where things that were not specifically presented, we would still want to do. So those planning commission items can certainly be considered. Any other comments? Councilman Greenspan.
Mr. Chairman, I'm meeting, as I mentioned earlier, with Matt Rubino tomorrow, so we'll be able to provide more. I'll be able to provide more comprehensive comments at that time.
Okay. Another thing that I would like to do is, yesterday we talked about the feedback that I asked each of you to provide me next week on November 7th, and I heard a couple of things. One is that I heard, well, do we want to look at the big picture first and try to make a decision as to the overall capability of what we might be able to spend, or do we want to look at specific items, and what should be the order of that? And I kind of came to the conclusion that the broad picture is the primary question, but that we also need to kind of do it simultaneously because time is short. Another aspect is that on November 7th, that's our last day of hearings when we're hearing the hospital and the mental health board and disabilities and a couple of other of those major agencies. And if I ask for your input on the 7th, you won't have a chance to fully factor in those presentations. And so what I'm going to ask you to do is to submit those recommendations to me by the close of business on the 8th, on Tuesday. I know it's election day, but we got a job to do here with the budget. And to assist in that process, I passed out a document to each of you, the document that says budget recommendations first draft, and this document kind of provides a template as to a format that you might use in presenting your recommendations, and I mean, it's up to you as to how you want to present it. But if you were thinking about, well, what does the chairman really have in mind? Well, this kind of shares with you what I have in mind, and this document has 4 parts. The first part is an overview, where I talk about the question of the general state of the county's finances and what I think we can reasonably do and what we can't do. Then the third part is proposed additions. The third part is proposed reductions. And the fourth part, which is optional if you have any, is that I had had some non-financial items, such as presenting the treasurer's office separately in the budget and things like that. And by the way, this template it does reflect my current thinking about the budget. So you have my thoughts before you have to give yours. But as we're only halfway through the process, I will produce another one, and I'm sure that there will be some changes before I produce my recommendations on November 8th. But this gives you a sense for what I have in mind, and if anyone from the public wants to look at this document, there are copies out on the table out there. So. Any questions about that? The other thing that I would mention is that when I get everybody's recommendations, I would like you to send them by email, and then we're going to have the staff compile them as a single document and redistribute them to everybody so that you'll all have the benefit of everybody's thinking. And if there's time, then on the meeting on the 9th, where we have it scheduled during work session, that meeting is scheduled for if any people from the departments have to come in and make additional presentations, but also if we have time at that meeting, hopefully we can just have some general discussion about what everybody's thinking is and start the process of making some decisions. So that's kind of what I have in mind as far as process is concerned. It's a very out in the open process, as it needs to be, and we're all going to have to be willing to come forward and state what our thinking is, and I'm sure we're not all going to agree, but we're going to hopefully find something that the council and the administration together feels is a good product. Any comments on that before we proceed? Okay, then we will proceed to our first item on the afternoon agenda, which is to bring forward Tracy Mason to present to us on behalf of the Senior and Adult Services. Ms. Mason, welcome to the committee.
Thank you.
And when you're ready, you may proceed.
Okay, thank you. First of all, I just want to restate the mission and the priorities of the Department of Senior and Adult Services. Our mission is to provide quality in-home and community-based services to seniors, disabled, and vulnerable adults based on individual need. The priorities that we've identified are enhance and maintain community partnerships while developing and nurturing new partnerships. Create an agency culture of leadership and development. Create an environment to fully integrate technology to strengthen our data collection process. Seek opportunities to promote and enhance the department's visibility as the premier provider for seniors and disabled and vulnerable adults. Implement a performance management system that includes a quality assurance program, ongoing review of logic models, centralized collection process for client information, and dashboard reporting. The next slide is primarily an overview of the services that we provide through the department and a number of seniors that we have served for 2010 as well as 2011. Of course, 2011 is a 9-month actual client served number. We do anticipate on serving the same amount of clients by the end of the year. Slide number 4, funding sources. I just want to share with you what's in some of the line items. Charges for services and miscellaneous. This includes client payment for services, a grant that we received from Western Reserve Area Agency on Aging to support a project to centralize resources for the senior and aging population, as well as revenue that we receive from probate court to assist seniors with guardianship. Also within intergovernmental funding revenue, pretty much you see that this line item has remained flat for 2012 and 2013. But I do want to note prior year, this line item decreased by 50% due to the transfer of our Medicaid staff moved over to the Department of Employment and Family Services. The next slide. Expenses by program. Just wanted to give you a sense of how dollars are allocated at a glance. I do want to point out within administration, this line item includes control services, which is slightly more than $1 million, have been added to this line item, which explains the 14% overhead in this category. However, if controlled services were pulled out from this line item, we would be at 8%. Within expenditures by line item, just to really give you another sense from a different angle of how we are allocating resources based on fringe benefits, commodities, contracts, and et cetera. Just a few things I do want to just highlight within this regard, particularly within client services, is a line item that we have to allocate additional supports to the seniors that we are working closely with. And some of those items we may need to support seniors to maintain their living conditions, such as utility assistance, moving, replacement of furniture, is really based on the needs of the client. The next slide. Just also want to share with you the allocation that we have set aside in our budget to contract providers. I listed, just to give you some idea of some of the type of services that we provide: congregate meals, adult day, services, chore, as well as transportation, homemaking. Also want to note within community social service programs, 100% of that budget is allocated to contract providers, whereas options, 58% of that total budget is allocated to contract providers. And on the final slide, in order to meet some of those priorities that I outlined earlier, is really going to require us to reorganize and restructure the department. And some of those things include re-evaluating the staff who's participating in our county stat efforts and making sure that all of our programs are aligned to best practices, as well, also known as benchmarking. Also, I do think it's really important that as the new administrator that the financial and contracting responsibilities report directly to me as the administrator, and the new deputy director will really focus on programs and services. This change will really allow for the leadership to not only bring their expertise in providing quality services, but make sure that we're doing that in the most efficient and effective manner. One more I would like to share with you. I really want to revisit the priorities of the advisory council, and also make sure we're increasing the awareness of all the work that's happening within our department. And that concludes my budget presentation, and I am prepared to take your questions.
Okay. Questions by any members of the committee? Ms. Conwell.
Is it through the chair to the director? On page 3-44, your case management system,
Yes.
You want to implement a comprehensive client management data system. What's the initial cost for that? And has there been some kind of savings that once that's implemented, how much it would actually save so it won't duplicate the data entry? So I don't know if you have the system already. I'm assuming that you guys
We actually have, each program area have their individual system, which is not fully integrated. So one of the things that is on our wish list is to be able to integrate those functions so it would really minimize the duplication of work and be able to generate accurate reporting.
Is there a timeline when we can expect that system to be up and running?
Well, we are going to be working closely with the Information and Resource Management Department to see what our options are in terms of creating a system with the current resources we have.
And one final question through the chair to the director. On page 3-45, I know what benefits checkup is. I'm just confused. It states in the first chart you have benefits checkup volunteers, but then there's a price tag of $15,000. So just wondering what the $15,000 is for.
The $15,000 was to bring on a volunteer coordinator that will work closely with the staff to broaden our resources by bringing in a large pool of volunteers to do benefits checkups with seniors out in various high-rises, various senior centers. So that cost was for that individual, for that volunteer coordinator.
And that I guess that's a part-time.
Yes.
So that doesn't include any benefits or anything like that?
No.
Okay. Ms. Simon?
I didn't think I indicated I had a question, but I'll ask one. Thank you, though. I was kind of thinking of one. Thank you. Getting pretty astute, Mr. Chair. Actually, the population that you serve, seniors and disabled, but how do you identify by what method? Who are you servicing? Probated people who need guardians or people from senior centers? How do you find out who your population is?
Well, it's definitely a mix. It's definitely seniors that's over the age of 60 years old, as well as anyone who has a disability that's from 18 to 59 years old.
How did they find you?
Well, we have partnerships in the community, and through word of mouth, through various publications that we receive quite a few calls. One slide there referred to the number of intake calls that we do receive from clients who are seeking services, and if we can't meet their need, we make sure we link them to other providers that can.
One final question, Mr. Chair, to Director. What are you, with this budget, do you anticipate being able to serve all those who need to be served?
Well, we are prepared to continue to serve the clients that we have.
What about the newcomers that need assistance? Would they be referred out to a partnership or?
Some perhaps may be referred out also, as some cases are closed that give us the capacity to take on more clients.
Councilman Rogers, followed by Brady.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And to the director, you made reference to your advisory committee, and you're looking to change the priorities of that advisory committee. Can you speak a little bit to that? And also, how are the advisory committee members selected and appointed?
Well, what we are looking at is really looking at how the advisory committee is currently functioning and how they can best support the work of the department. So that may happen through community work, committee work, whether we are focusing on marketing and public relations to get the word out about the work that we do, whether we are looking at best practices. I see this as a resource pool to really help us move further along with our priorities that's identified within the department. And I'm going to ask Joe to respond to how council folks are involved in the advisory council.
Mr. Gardner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, it's my understanding that members to the advisory council are nominated by the executive, and I believe, and I will verify this, ultimately approved by council.
Okay.
And we currently have 25 seats, and roughly around 16 of them have been filled.
Thank you.
Councilman Brady?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Let's just assume, for sake of discussion, that the council thought that that you might need more resources. If you were able to have more resources, how would you use them?
Really to assist us to get a firm handle on our technology needs. As I said earlier, many of our systems are not integrated. So to have the resources to make sure that we're able to report information on the clients that we're working with, to really simplify the work, and duplication of efforts would really be significant for us.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, anything else?
Mr. Chair, follow-up question?
Councilwoman Simon, then Jones?
If there could be a connection with our Jeff Maury, our chief
Absolutely.
IT, to help with those resources. Have you done that yet?
Not yet,
Okay.
but it is on the list for us to sit down and meet with him and review what our platform is from a technology perspective and put a plan together to move forward.
Councilman Jones?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm sure maybe many of my colleagues, like myself, have received calls from many concerned about their budgets. I've certainly received calls from some of the 43 community partners. One comment, just to speak in general about, but not about anyone in particular, you talked about some things being cut. Has there been a general cut to the overall services of those 43 partners, or maybe some use a lifeline as?
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Gauntner?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To Mr. Purnell, through the chairman, there has not been a reduction in contracts amounts for the current year. I believe that there were some budget reductions coming into this year, at the start of 2011. And that may be what you're hearing, or it's possible that those are reflective of contracts from outside the four walls of Department of Senior and Adult Services as well. Certainly, it's my understanding, I believe, and I will ask Ms. Mason to correct me, I believe the Western Reserve Area Agency on Aging had some significant budget cuts to many of these same providers as part of the state budget process. And if you're hearing things recently, it would be my guess that you're hearing the reverberations of the state budget and the Western Reserve Area Agency's local funding.
Yes, that is correct.
Okay. Ms. Mason, am I correct that a lot of the basic services staff, that there were some very significant reductions in the buyout process that occurred? And the question is, do you have sufficient staff to provide the necessary services in direct programs such as adult protective services?
We are prepared to work within the budget that we have.
Can you give us some indication on how many staff people have been lost and what the impact of that is?
I'm going to use one of my lifeline and ask Maureen to join us as our deputy director over our adult protective services program that can give you a little bit more insight.
Good afternoon, Council and Chairman. In adult protective services, we really have not had a major impact on being able to service those consumers based on the staff that we currently have. What we did when we lost that staff was we terminated another program, the Grandparent Kinship Program, and took those social workers and transferred them into Adult Protective Services to try and sustain that program so that it would not have a major impact on any of our seniors that needed to have protection. Some of the other areas are the other areas that are of some concern.
What other areas are of concern?
One of the areas that we look at is the increasing need for direct services. And when an agency like the Western Reserve Area Agency on Aging begins to cut their funding, very often those individuals are referred to the Department of Senior and Adult Services. It's kind of disheartening at times when you have to turn people away in order to be able to provide services to them right away. Because not only are services being cut just with the larger organizations like the county and Western Reserve, it's having a strong impact on those smaller organizations that seniors used to be able to go to.
What kind of services are you talking about?
Oh, these services could be homemaking, they could be personal care services, those services that seniors and disabled individuals grow to rely heavily on.
Mr. Chair, on that point,
Sure.
how many are you keeping a list of those turned away or some sort of waiting list or something like that? So.
Yes, our waiting lists have been varying at a high of approximately 81, at a low at around 21. One of the things that occurs with this population is that they don't always have the luxury to wait. Many of them come to us in dire need of services at that moment. So when we have to turn them away, some of them actually come to us with doctor's orders requesting those individual services. We have to try and get them connected with other resources in order for them to get what they need. So the waiting list does vary. We do work within our ability to assign people based on attrition.
Does the county directly provide homemaking and personal care services?
Yes, we do.
Okay. Okay. Rogers?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was just looking for my notes because I recently met with some members who serve on the advisory board, and they brought a number of things to my attention, and I couldn't find my notes, but what Mr. Gaultner said kind of sparked my memory regarding the cuts, the severe cuts that have happened at the state level and the Western Reserve area, whatever they're called. I'm just wondering, they were pretty effective, these members of the committee, the advisory committee were pretty effective in advocating to me what they saw, and they were particularly advocating my role on the council for at least level funding for senior and adult services. However, and as you just mentioned, the bigger problem is these other cuts that we've been seeing and how it's impacting our ability to provide services to our senior population. And I'm wondering, is that a role, advocacy, particularly at the state and what other levels there are, federal, to use the advisory committee as an advocacy type board to actually find people to sit on that board that can work at the various levels of government to kind of advocate for better funding?
Well, our plan is to schedule a meeting with Ed Jers to talk about some of those issues and really create a plan of how we can support the work that he's doing and advocating on behalf of Cuyahoga County overall.
Mm-hmm. And I'd be interested in how those conversations go.
Okay.
Also, I know I'm looking at your budget decision items, and we have on 3-44 for people that are interested. And you have 4 items under here, and we just have a grand total, and I'm wondering if somewhere you have it itemized on what each of these decision items would cost.
I'm sorry, where are you again?
I'm on Roman numeral 3-44,
Okay.
and you have budget decision items. 1, benefit checkup, case management system, server replacement, and staffing. Are these included in the budget, or are these additional items?
Looks like some of them are included.
I'm not sure if I see what you see. Roman number 3-44. Senior adult.
Here we go.
Thank you.
Matt Rubino, Office of Budget Management. The pages you're looking at, Councilman, were from a draft version. We provided replacement pages 2 weeks ago. Their budget for 2012 is the 17.6, I believe. They do not have any additional items aside from the proposed budget.
So those budget items then were not.
Those were request items only. They've not been funded in this proposed budget.
Okay, that's my answer.
Mr. Rubino, so you said 17.6 and 16.971 are the numbers for 12 and 13?
Correct, Mr. Chairman.
And none of the decision items were approved?
That is correct, Mr. Chairman.
Okay.
Mr. Chair,
Ms. Conwell?
through the chair to the director. Senior and Adult Protective Services, they provide transportation services to the seniors too, correct?
We do contract with service providers to provide transportation, yes.
So do you need some kind of funding in that? Because I thought that was cut back. I know there's some various senior complexes in my district alone that, have been complaining about the cutbacks for them. So, I mean, I don't see that as a budget decision item. I mean, what work, if anything, is being done to get that transportation service back to those individuals, to get them to their doctor's appointments, grocery stores, and all that kind of stuff?
I do agree with you. I do know that there are challenges out in the community, particularly as an individual coming from the community, in terms of transportation being a challenge for seniors to get out and move about in their community. However, within the contract line items that we have, our goal is to continue to allocate what we have budgeted. So on the one slide where I referred to the 43 community partners that we work with, we will continue to do our best to meet those needs as we can.
Please continue. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, to the Councilwoman, in relationship to the transportation issue, the county not only supports a county-wide strategy of the senior transportation connection, I believe, but additionally, I understand in talking with the Director of Aging from the City of Cleveland as recently as last week, that they are in the process of working with and believe they have an agreement to extend and expand the use of community development block grant funds in every ward of the city over the next, I believe, 15 months to be able to increase transportation services there as well. And while I think the Councilwoman is correct in identifying that as a significant need of seniors, I just wanted to make it clear for some council folks who may not be aware that there are also other resources at hand to assist with that.
And to the chair, to the director. So I just want to get this straight. Mr. Rubino stated that none of these budget decision items was included in this budget. But if you're saying, Director, that these 4 items are needed to improve or make efficiency or whatever, then I guess we would need an itemized breakdown, as Councilman Rogers stated, so we could consider those items. Because if not, then none of the things that you proposed will be implemented because you don't have the funds for it. So.
Excuse me, Mr.
Mr. Gauntner.
Thank you. While we are very blessed and lucky to have Ms. Mason with us as administrator, I must at least offer her the lifeline back of now she's entering her 4th week of county employment and perhaps was not at hand when those particular items were identified. In terms of the detail question, the factual question that you asked, I assume that information is available and can be provided if necessary.
I would point out that on the top of 3-45, there is an itemization of 4 decision items, and they are things that the director talked about that she needs. She talked about almost all of them. The benefits checkup, volunteer coordinator, the case management system, the server replacement, and then finally the staffing for the home health aides, which goes to the difficulty she expressed about being able to meet the needs for those direct services. So that's an itemization of it with at least some detail on those.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Brady.
On this precise, on what you brought up, Mr. Gauntner, maybe you can help with this. I had been looking at this and was having trouble understanding what was in the budget and what wasn't in the budget. And the narrative under the staffing reads that out of, I believe it reads that out of 8 positions that became vacant, it seems to indicate that the budget that's been proposed would include funding for 6. But over on the other page under the staffing, I'm pretty certain the just north of $300,000 is not a measurement of 2 staff positions, or am I wrong?
Well, let me hold this up for a minute.
Okay.
This is in the area where it was pointed out that what's in here is not correct, and that they passed out to us replacement pages, and the fact is that none of these 4 items listed on the top of 3-45 are in the budget as currently proposed. Is that correct, Mr. Gauntner?
Mr. Chairman, I believe that to be the case. I would look to Mr. Rubino, though, to be the final arbiter of that.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to have Mr. Rubino give us a little clarity, if possible.
Absolutely.
I remember now that there were replacement pages, but
Mr. Chairman, I refer back to my earlier comments. When the book originally came out, we inadvertently pulled in some draft sections. We provided you the updated sections subsequent to that. So the decision items, they were requests. They have not been funded in the proposed budget as of right now. And they do have a reduction in staffing on an FTE basis, because you do recall the Medicaid benefits unit was transferred to Employment Family Services. So you're seeing the full impact of that move in 2012 also when it comes to staffing.
Mr.
Councilman Brady?
I'm sorry.
I'll hold.
Councilman Greenspan?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Being the auditor that I once was, I don't throw anything out. So I've got these pages in here. I've marked them superseded, meaning they've been replaced. Their numbers are different, but we did not receive a modification to the first few pages of the budget, the summary. And I noticed that the numbers, some have gone up and some have gone down between 2012 and 2013. Am I to assume that because we did not receive, let me give you a table. The table starting with pages II, that the changes did not flow forward and that these schedules need to be replaced as well?
Mr. Chairman, to the council member, no, the schedules are the budget. Those have not changed. The problem was some of the individual departmental sections were not footing to the schedules because we had included some drafts. The schedules have been the final proposed budget. Those have not changed. So any departmental section you see individually will foot to those schedules. So starting on I-1 all the way through the end to the final page of the schedules. The schedules are the budget. The individual departmental sections are the write-ups and the additional detailed information on what comprises those budgeted amounts. So what we provided you were updated departmental sections that included the final proposed budgets for every county agency. There were a few that we inadvertently included request amounts in with the header table that shouldn't have been there. But the proposed budget has not changed since we submitted on October 11th and provided the schedules on the 14th.
Okay, thank you.
Director, I think we're all struggling a little bit with these revised versions. Can you do we have the revised versions? Were there multiple revisions on multiple days, or did they come on one day? How can we best give everybody
Mr. Chairman,
an updated version?
If I may, the entire book in its revised version was provided. The last revision we made was to development. That was to narrative only. So you have that entire document is available. Most of the revised departmental sections were provided on, it would have been the week of, I think, the 14th.
We sent those revised copies out to everyone via email and then provided handouts after that. And then the only other thing I believe was the table of contents.
Table of contents was
sent.
correct, changed to match
Yes.
some of the page numbers. But again, the schedules that contain the actual budget, the numbers have not changed.
I think what we need right now is a single document that contains all the revisions.
And Mr. Chairman, that is the document that's been provided. You have the revised document in its entirety.
Was that the long?
No, that was the resolution. The updates to the budget
The
book.
resolution, there was a long sheet.
No, Mr. Director, what I had, I don't think we want to kill enough trees to produce whole new budget books.
Correct.
You know, what we want is a single document that contains all of the revisions to this budget book that have been made. Can you get that to us?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I can email to the clerk.
Okay.
It's the document that's currently on the county website and on council website, just to be clear, but we can email that document in its entirety.
It's very hard to review it online and then bring it all in memory over here. I mean, the 21st century is great, and there's a lot of times where we can do that, but we can't do it here. So, to Joe, the director is going to email us a single document that contains all the changes that have been made to this budget book, so that we can work with this budget book plus one document that contains the corrections that we can refer to when we need to, and I think that will help us do better.
That would be very helpful, because I really didn't want to get into the habit of printing up a whole
No,
document
we
every
don't
time
want
a change is
to. We
made.
don't want to kill enough trees to make whole
Yes.
new budget books.
Thank you.
So we were before we got on that tangent, we were talking about senior and adult services and who has questions that have not yet been recognized.
Mr. Chairman,
Councilman Jones.
as I read the budget performance, at the mid-year point, there was a surplus. And it says 46% of that surplus was in client services. Can I take that to mean that that was the community partners role, the congregate meals, adult day service, things like that, transportation again?
I'm going to
I'm
ask
assuming-
David Dombrowski
Okay.
to join me at this point.
Hello again. David Dombrowski from Department of Children and Family Services, but recently interim director of the Department of Senior and Adult Services. At mid-year, the dollar amounts that you're referencing are primarily underspending in our options program contracts. Those are not the community social services program contracts which you're referring to. These are private contracts with for-profit vendors for the most part who do provide.
Oh, sorry. Go
I'm sorry. Do provide homemaking services, personal care. They do not fund, or we don't fund. I'm sorry. DSAS does not fund that at this particular time. They do home delivered meals, not congregate meals. So there are some nuanced differences between the two programs.
Similar services, just different providers. It's not the community partners, but you said contractors.
Yeah, the community partners that you're referring to under the community social service programs are your generally your not-for-profit providers in the community. We also do some contracting with municipalities. The program is fundamentally different in that the vendors go out and seek their own clients because they're neighborhood-based and they're pulling clients from their own neighborhoods. The DSAS funds the programs and then ultimately goes out and audits the contracts to determine whether or not they're meeting the terms of the contracts as we've laid them out. Options is different in that options refers the individual clients, social workers refer them to the contracted providers. So it's a slight difference, but an important difference for our staff.
Okay. The balance of the surplus, that was in what area?
That was overall in options. When the contracts were developed, that RFP was released in 2009. No, I'm sorry, 2010 for the 2011-2012 years. Some assumptions were made at the time that I think were invalid assumptions, so some services were overfunded. So what was underway as I was departing senior and adult services was that we were realigning some of the dollars to move from underspending in options to fund some of the overspending that's going on in the community social services arena. So the plan was to move some of the dollars from options over to CSSP for the balance of 2012.
Okay. Now I'm going to ask the question you've already answered, just ask you to answer it again. Where did you see the need, where the dollars being stretched, that you have a need in this department? And you answered it earlier for Councilman Brady, but I just want to hear it again.
Regarding our data collection process, and we do have integrated, our systems are not currently integrated. Each program area have a separate database, so we really want to move to an environment where our systems are integrated.
Thank you.
Okay. Other questions? Okay. Councilman Germano, you almost got off.
Well, this, Mr. Chairman, to Ms. Mason, this is just in general. I was looking at the clients served and the clients served year to date. But, my question is, well, let me say my statement. Let me say it's not a question, it's a statement. I believe that the census has proved that we have an aging population in Cuyahoga County, faster than youth, and people are living longer. You have how many people were served in 2010. I'm just wondering what the projections are, because Social Security hasn't been increased and fees are going up and gas is going up and so on and so forth. Just in general, isn't there going to be a greater need in 2012 and 2013 for senior and adult services because of what I've stated?
I would definitely agree with you. Given the staffing structure that we currently have in place, we are prepared to continue to work with the population that we have. Particularly, we think that we're going to hit around $17,000 by the end of the year. 17,000 seniors by the end of the year.
According to the UN, we're definitely heading in that direction. It's not as bad as Germany and Japan, but we're getting there. Any other comments, questions? Okay, now you're done. Okay, and the next
before we get started?
Yes.
Only as a suggestion to Mr. Rubino, who's been asked to provide us with a document of updates. Might I suggest that he send it to us just with the document with all changes preserved in it, so it'd be easier to match up, so we only produce those pages so we can see it with the changes actually in the document as opposed to a cleaned up one. I mean, that way, anybody who wants to print out those 4 or 5 pages where they can read through the book and see where changes appeared, I think it might be a lot easier for all of us. The pagination will be wrong, but that's okay. We can live with that and just pull out the 4 or 5 or 6 pages. But if you send the whole thing with changes already color identified as far as where the changes take place, I think it'll make it much easier for you and certainly easier for us as opposed to a cleaned up document. Just as a suggestion. But that's not the whole, they're asking for the whole thing.
We're not asking for the whole thing.
Oh.
To clarify what we're asking for. We asked for.
I thought you were asking for the whole thing.
We asked for only the pages that have changes, which is a small number of departments, so that we have a single document that we can have present along with the budget book, so that where there's changes, we can be referred to the appropriate page on the document that contains the changes. But we certainly don't want to reprint the entire budget book.
I was not advocating printing a single page other than the few pages that you wanted. I was asking electronically to get an entire budget book the way he probably has it on his file right this moment electronically.
It's online,
Yeah,
Mr. Schron.
right.
The whole budget book is online.
But with the changes identified as far as color coded, it's an updated, it's a cleaned up version of what's online. It's not it's a cleaned up version, is it not, Mr. Rubino? Yes.
It's all online, but we want to have something that we can use here in the committee.
Going to say, Mr. Chair, we have a copy that was presented, I believe, last week.
Yeah. There's only 3 sections, and Matt can correct me if I'm wrong. We have the Department of Development, several of this packet with the Health and Human Services agencies, and then we have changes to the table of contents. That's all I'm aware of. Those 3 items. That's it.
Okay. Well, all we want is those 3 items packaged as a single document so that we can have that document in front of us in committee when we need to refer to it.
Is there any, I mean, we can make copies of this in the back room now and just pass them out.
Some of us have it and some of us don't.
That's why I'm saying we can make copies in the.
Okay. Okay.
Huh? These were the.
Can we have them made in the next little bit? Okay. Okay. The next item is we're going to hear the presentation from the Office of Homeless Services, and making the presentation is Ms. Ruth Gillette. Welcome to the committee.
Good afternoon, Council. Thank you for having these hearings. At Christmas, I did a parody to a song and thought a little bit about reprising a parody today, but kind of couldn't get by, tunes. I thought of Can't Buy Me Love, something with money in it. First I Look at the Purse, which is a song from the 60s. Ray Charles, Them's That Got is Them's That Gets, but nothing really snapped, so no song. We're just going to go right into the presentation. So, the Office of Homeless Services coordinates a continuum of care of outreach, shelter, services, and permanent housing intended to prevent and reduce homelessness. And we also coordinate strategies and resources with community stakeholders, including homeless and formerly homeless persons. The funding sources for the Office of Homeless Services totaled $23.5 million in 2011. Almost 80% of those dollars came from the federal government, Department of Housing and Urban Development, with about 20% being provided through the county general fund budget levy funding. The expenses that we administered through the Office of Homeless Services were distributed according to this pie chart. It shows about 13% of the funds went to support basic shelter in the community, 11% for transitional housing programs, 23.5% was distributed through homeless prevention and rapid rehousing programming, and 51% supported permanent supportive housing in the community for homeless persons with disabilities. In terms of performance, these are some additional numbers. I know there are numbers in the budget book. These are unduplicated numbers. There are about 400 families with over 700 children that were provided shelter, over 4,500 single individuals, including women. 20%, we were able to divert about 20% of the people who showed up at the shelter door from coming into the system. Through the Homeless Prevention and Rapid Rehousing Program, this number actually should be higher. There's over 3,000 households that have received assistance to either prevent them from becoming homeless or to rapidly exit the shelter system. In our community, we have over 1,200 units of permanent supportive housing for homeless persons with disabilities. Of those persons, about 91% remain housed. And another statistic that we measure our community outcomes on is the percentage of individuals that move from transitional housing into permanent housing, and that exceeds 70%. So a quick review. In spite of the performance measures and some of the strides that have been made, there is an increase in the number of newly homeless persons in our community, and we document these numbers through a homeless management information system. There will be a decrease in federal resources supporting the continuum of cares throughout the country, and that's as a result of Congress not supporting President Obama's budget, where he had proposed an increase for funding for homeless continuums. And thirdly, we continue to have a need for more affordable housing for all households in the community. So that's the end of the presentation.
Thank you very much. That was succinct and to the point and chock full of good statistics. We thank you very much. Questions by my colleagues? Councilman Brady is the chairperson, and then Greenspan, and then Conwell.
About a month ago or so, I was trying to understand get a better sense of the new standards that have been developed for the shelters. I believe they go into effect at the beginning of the year, so I was talking to some of you folks, I guess, in your shop, so to speak, and I'm sure if they were here, they would definitely say that they could get by with what has been presented in the budget. But there was when pressed by me as part of just an overall discussion, but like I say, that was for my benefit to understand the standards better. There was, I had asked, what would be helpful? What could be done that would be helpful? And one of the things that I was told was that a few more crisis intervention specialists would make a big difference in these shelters. Could you speak to that?
To the council person through the chair, I believe I was apprised of your conversation with the providers, and I think that discussion has to do with funding from the Adams Board to the Mobile Crisis Unit, which is a community-based mental health service that is operated through Mental Health Services Incorporated, and that at one time had sufficient staff that when shelters encountered mental health crises, clients that were having a mental health issue, staff were able to be deployed to the shelter and provide some direct interventions. But as funding has been cut back because of the state cuts, they are no longer able to provide that high level of service. And basically it's a phone interaction that is provided. So, clearly, the shelter population, as all aspects of our population, would benefit from easier, more access to mental health services prior to crisis. So, if the state could see a way to restore funding through the mental health system, that would certainly benefit our community as well.
All right. Well, if the state couldn't see a way to do that, could you see a way that that we could do that?
Well, I don't know that I can answer that question. My office doesn't contract for mobile crisis services. I to the extent that the administration supports funding through the Adams Board, I don't know if that's something that would be part of a negotiation with that system. Joe, do you have any suggestions here?
Should we be talking about the Adams Board?
To the councilman through the chair, certainly my guess is there are probably a number of options that are available. One of which I believe when the Adams Board was here last time, they identified that they had received $1 million that they had not as yet allocated into their contracts. Presumably there are other options available as well.
I'd like to explore them.
Thank you.
Okay, and we have Councilman Greenspan and Conwell.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair. How many consumers do you service over the course of a year? Is this number here, the 384 families, 760 children, and 4,500 single persons, is that about 5,000 people?
To the councilperson through the chair, the numbers that were listed, first of all, I just want to be really clear. My office doesn't provide direct client services. These are persons that were served through programming in the community. And so, and again, we are able to count the number of people that receive services and provide information about them because we manage, my office does manage a homeless management information system. So yes, the numbers that you see there represent the numbers of persons, an unduplicated number of persons served. So, having said that, we also know that on any given night, for example, the shelter beds are full. So if you wanted to come up with a total number of a duplicated number, you'd come up with a much, much larger number. I don't know, does that answer what you're trying to get at?
Somewhere around 5,000, give or take, is what I'm getting at.
Right.
Looking at some of the other programs that we've heard today, where is there a duplication of services?
See, to the councilperson through the chair, I'm not sure I understand your question.
What is it that you do that other agencies do as well within the county, or that you provide services through your agency?
To the councilperson through the chair, the Office of Homeless Services, I don't think is duplicated anywhere in the county that I'm aware of. What we do is in some ways operate on a parallel stream with other systems who are serving the same clients. So there are people in the homeless shelter system who have mental health illness, serious, they have physical disabilities, they have alcohol and drug issues, they are previous consumers of the foster care system. They have been involved with the criminal justice system. So to the extent that folks that the continuum are trying to assist have had interaction with other systems, and I don't know, again, if this is what you're saying, I think that there is more that could be done to leverage resources among the systems to better both prevent people from becoming homeless and help them end their homelessness more quickly.
Well, I guess, Mr. Chair, I guess what I'm trying to understand is between senior and adult services, workforce development, some of the other county-funded programs or agencies or pass-throughs, is there anything that you, I guess in your case, that you contract with where the county can provide those services that are not currently being provided?
To the councilperson through the chair, no. What we try to do is, for example, workforce development is a really good example. Generally speaking, they do not see people that are in the homeless shelter system as clients for their system because their funding requires a fairly high level of positive outcomes, and so they are inclined to assist folks who have lower barriers to employment. And so to the extent that we would perhaps like to engage with that system, it would have to be through some kind of federal funding or some kind of grant that is very specific to the populations that we serve. There's no,
Okay. All right. I'm just trying to understand where, if there's any overlap or redundancy, or how we can arbitrage our current system and programs with what you're doing. That was the purpose of me asking the question. All right. Thank you.
Ms. Conwell.
Through the chair to the director, on page 3-40, just one thing, it's not a question, just if you could explain it to me. The initiative focus on front door and back door of shelter. Not sure what that means. It was under the 2012-2013 initiatives.
I'm sorry, it's
3-40.
right. Oh, focus on front door and back door of shelter. To the councilperson through the chair. Again, what we're really trying to change the impression of the community to, look at shelter not as a destination, but rather as a safety net. And that the effort in the community, while it's obviously critically important to have a safety net, is not just to create the safety net and expand the safety net, but to rather begin to look upstream and try to figure out why people are becoming homeless, and also to be very cognizant that no one can live in a shelter and we have to figure out how to help people leave the shelter. And so what that really refers to is really beginning to try to get the community focused collectively, not just my office, on how do we better intervene to prevent people from becoming homeless. And again, those systems that I mentioned all have at some level some types of interventions. But anyway, it really is trying to work with systems to develop better discharge planning, more links to help families remain stable, and at the same time, look at how we can more quickly exit people from the shelter.
Okay, Ms. Gillette, you testified that your office doesn't provide direct services but acts in a coordinating fashion. My question is how are the direct services, such as the shelters themselves, and the transitional housing, how are those services paid for?
Mr. Councilman or Chair, So the county, through levy dollars, provides funding for my office to contract with providers to provide basic shelter services, for example. In addition, the federal funding, the Office of Homeless Services acts as what's called the lead agency for the continuum of care and submits an annual application on behalf of a number of agencies in the community. And then those agencies receive direct funding through grant agreements from HUD. And in addition, the county itself is an applicant through that process and receives direct funding, so which we then contract for those services in the community.
Okay. Anything else?
Chairman.
Jones.
Chairman, to Ms. Gillette. I was looking at the statistics, 73% of persons moving from transitional housing to permanent housing. I visited a transitional housing facility, and I sat at a round table with the directors and the families, husbands and wives, and the single mothers who were living in the facility. And they were celebrating the numbers of them that had gotten work, gone out, and they'd found jobs to assist in their permanent housing. And it was a good 7 out of 10 of them. There were a few who were still positive and said, I'm going to find that job, and they were still going out. But there was a good number of them finding housing. When it comes to funding, where in that pipeline do you see the need for dollars to help people become self-sufficient, to really support that process of becoming self-sufficient? Where would you see those dollars actually going? Would it be at the direct right in those facilities or somewhere else and that keeps the pipeline moving? But
to the councilperson through the chair, you know, the kind of historically, the continuum of cares attempted to develop employment programs within each agency. And that really was not cost effective nor particularly successful. And in the past 5 years or so, the learning has been that that to the extent that people who have become homeless can be reintegrated into the mainstream, they have a better chance for success. And so to the extent that there could be some expansion of the workforce development effort to develop a strategy to reach out to people who have higher barriers to employment in a meaningful way. I think that that is the larger sort of public policy approach to solving that problem.
Workforce development.
Yeah.
Anything else? Okay.
Thank you very much. Okay.
Okay. We now move on to early childhood, invest in children. Ms. Dorman, welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and good afternoon to everybody. So you should have a blue handout here for this. Should be easy to find. I will walk you through that and then entertain your questions. So Invest in Children is a nationally recognized public-private partnership, and want to point out that Invest in Children is the name of this public-private partnership. It is staffed by the Office of Early Childhood with a staff of 8. We in the office are the staffing to this larger public-private partnership. It was created in 1999 as public and private sector leaders came together and determined that we needed a coordinated, comprehensive system to address the early childhood years, which is prenatal until kindergarten. And so here we are 12 years later. Our mission, which was determined through a strategic planning process, has not changed since 2004 to mobilize resources and energy to ensure the well-being of all young children in Cuyahoga County, provide supportive services to parents and caregivers, and build awareness, momentum, and advocacy in the community around children and family issues. Again, our vision, which has remained the same, is that all children in Cuyahoga County will reach their full potential, nurtured by families sensitive to their needs and supported by a community committed to their success. Our structure is really focused around three programmatic goals. Goal 1, effective parents and families. Goal 2, safe and healthy children. And Goal 3, children prepared for school. And there are programs under each of those. Goal 4, which is creating a community committed to children, is a aspirational goal for the county and is not a programmatic area for us. As you'll see, there are 4 programs in Goal 1, 1 in Goal 2, and 4 under Goal 3 in those different program areas. Next, you'll see our organizational chart showing the staff in the office. We're essentially a professional staff with 2 people with bachelor's level, 4 with master's, 1 with a PhD. So we are the staff, again, to the partnership. Like other departments that you've heard, we're not a direct provider of services. We are a coordinator and maintainer of a system of services overall. Our funding, as you see in 2012, how the funding is delineated between federal and state dollars and the levy dollars. I would also call your attention to the fact that although private funds are not reflected, grant dollars are not in our operating budget because of the way the county does its bookkeeping. It's a significant 10% of our budget, at about $1.7 million in private dollars from foundation grants. And that is, at the heart of the public-private partnership that thankfully our private funders have stuck with us. It's often that a foundation will come in, give you some startup dollars, and then say, you're on your own. Our private foundation community has been very kind and generous to recognize that Invest in Children has really been an ongoing commitment. And so that has really helped us keep the partnership strong. And of course, we're pleased that the public side of the equation has also continued to support us through the years. Next page, you see that 95% of the dollars that come in the door to us go back out into the community to serve clients. Our operations within the Office of Early Childhood is about 4.7% of the total funds. And again, this is without factoring in that additional $1.7 million, which again goes out the door to serve children and families. Next pie chart slide gives you a sense of how the dollars are distributed amongst the different programs that fall under the goal areas. And if it's easier for you, we also, on the next page, you have it as a list and chart format and showing you the percentages that go to each program area. And in closing, I've just given you a quick review of some of the impacts in terms of the numbers of children and families served. 2,421 with a confirmed delay or disability, 1,723 in high-risk families getting home visiting services and family support services, 376 with serious social emotional concerns receiving clinical services through our early childhood mental health program, 2,200 high-risk families receiving a newborn home visit from a nurse, 1,200 preschoolers receiving a high-quality preschool experience through our universal pre-kindergarten program, and 1,170 children with special needs who are able to be maintained or mainstreamed, if you will, within their child care setting because of the training, technical assistance, and in some case equipment if there's a child with a medical need that we're able to provide to the child care facilities. And so with that, I will be happy to answer your questions.
Thank you very much for your presentation. Questions by my colleagues? Ms. Conwell.
Through the chair to the director, for the funding sources on 3-22, you mentioned about the private donations. So you don't have any that are coming in for 2012 or 2013 right now that we know?
Well, we haven't received donations yet. For 2012, they would come in the year. Donations will be reflected in the budget as they occur. Private grant dollars are never reflected in your operating budget, and I don't know, that's just the way the county does it. So we hope that we will have some donations. We've had, on an ongoing basis, Eaton Corporation and United Way have been very generous in giving us dollars, and we have other scattered donations as well.
So for the, so even if I donated $100,000, I could not designate and say it was for the 2012, 2013? I could, but I mean, would
yes.
You wouldn't report it until 20?
That's an accounting. I'm assuming it would show up eventually in the 2012 budget. Yes, if it was a donation. And we're hopeful we will have some.
Yes. I have a couple more questions, but I'll defer to somebody else.
Okay. Councilman Rogers.
Thank you, Dr. Dorman. I just have a question regarding the TANF funds. I'm showing here an estimate under your funding sources. It says 2011 estimate was $46,000, but the estimate for the next year, 2012, is $764,000.
Yes.
Okay.
In the preparation of the budget, there was an error in placing those TANF funds in this budget. Those funds, and I understand in material that will be coming back to council, the proposal will be to allocate those otherwise in human services. Though what's important to know is that this does not represent a need for additional subsidy, in that when those funds were distributed, the amount distributed to the other sections of Department of Health and Human Services were lower, and so they would have had an offsetting levy subsidy. So it's my understanding that there is a developing list of some technical corrections that will be presented to council at a future point.
So Mr. Gauntner, you're saying that $764,000, should that be a lower number or should it be zero? What?
My understanding is that I believe that number should be zero, and that there would be a corresponding increase, there would be a corresponding increase in levy subsidy, but that would be offset by a decline in levy subsidy to the other divisions and offices of Health and Human Services wherein those TANF funds are to be redistributed. So there's no net impact on the total level of expense, nor any net impact on the amount of levy subsidy required.
Okay. Councilman Rogers. Okay. Ms. Conwell.
Through the chair to the director, for the 2012-2013 initiatives that you have listed, the agency has planned. Do you have a timeline drafted when each is expected to be completed? We have quite a few. Could you send us a timeline?
To the councilwoman through the chair. Each of them has its own timeline. If there was one or two that you're mostly interested in, I could give you that, or if you want me, I can run through the whole list. It's.
If you don't have to go over them today, but if you can send the timelines to all of us.
Sure, we'd be happy to.
I'm interested.
Yeah, sure.
Please send that to Trevor McAleer, our budget person, to be distributed to the full council.
Absolutely.
Okay.
And just one final question. I'd be off on this. I was writing late. The decrease of around 18,000 from 2011 projected to the 2012 base budget was due to what? There was a...
This is a sort of a technical budgeting question. I'm going to defer to my budget person who's explained this to me, and she can do it better.
Thank you. The decrease, the actual amount in terms of subsidy for 2011 is an estimate. It's based on actual expenses for 2011, and the amount for 2012 is actually based on the budgeted total minus revenues equal the subsidy estimate. So you can have a subsidy increase or a greater amount in one year versus another year, and it has to do with your actual expenditures less your revenues that equals subsidy in one year. And then when you budget your or determine your funding sources for the next budget year, the subsidy is estimated based on your actual budget in terms of expenditures minus your revenues, and that equals the subsidy amount. So there is a slight decrease in subsidy, but overall the percentage went up because it's due to the amount of intergovernmental revenues that we expect in 2012 versus 2011.
Thank you.
Any other questions about that?
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Chairman, please proceed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Ms. Norman, in our county executive's town hall meetings, he has mentioned on several occasions that one of the investments is early childhood. Best early, you have to spend less later on. At this point, has there been any investments, any dollars directed towards that objective? When I look at the projected budgets and the base budget, I don't see, it doesn't appear to be reflected in what I see.
Sure. To the councilman through the chair, there was an additional $200,000 allocated during this current budget year to the Universal Pre-Kindergarten Program. That was an increase, and that is being also reflected is in this budget. My understanding is there's an additional $800,000 that would bring the total to $1 million that is being looked for to see if we can identify those additional dollars to again allow the expansion of the Universal Pre-Kindergarten Program. And we would be moving to do an RFP for that expanded program probably in March of 2012.
Thank you.
On that point, is the $200,000 is that one time or is that per year, and is it in 2011 or is it in 2012? Where does it show up?
It was additional $200,000 that was added in 2011, and it's also in 2012 additional levy dollars that were allocated.
And is it in 2013 as well?
Yes, it would be carried forward because the budget stays flat. Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? I have one more, which is suppose you're to imagine a full system in which all children get early visits, all children go to preschool, all children get health care checkups, and all children that seem to have mental health problems are identified and get early treatment. And if compared to a full system, how much are we doing? Are we doing 5%? Are we doing 10%? Are we doing 50%? Can you give me some kind of an understanding of where we are in terms of a potential build out of a fully serving system for the county?
Mr. Chair, I would say that this county has a lot to be proud of because we do have an amazing array of services, a real breadth of services. And so I think in that way we really shine within the state of Ohio. We're unparalleled in the breadth of services. In terms of depth, meaning numbers to be served, I would say we're doing it goes program by program. So, for example, Universal Pre-Kindergarten, which we were just talking about, we're serving 1,200 kids. In the initial feasibility study we did, the goal was 12,000 kids. Quite honestly, that's a very large price tag, but that was the goal for that program. So if you look at UPK, you'd be saying we're serving maybe 10% of who we project would be interested in benefit from the program. With early childhood mental health, I think we could easily double, it's sort of if you build it, they will come. Sometimes you don't even know what the need is until you're ready to meet the need, because you don't advertise services if you're just going to turn people away. But I think we could easily double that. Help Me Grow, our county home visiting program, as we've connected with the Department of Children and Family Services with a liaison on site, we've seen a significant growth in services, and we could most likely, within our county home visiting program, easily double the number there. So I can keep going, but it's sort of a program by program question. With our newborn home visit program, at our height, when it was a universal program that every first-time mom got, we served 8,000 families a year. So we're serving around 2,000 because we're focused on high-risk families. So that's a factor of 4. So that gives you some sense. I think it's a program-by-program question. So if I said the glass is half full, I would say we are doing way more than any other county in Ohio and most communities in the country. When I presented nationally about what Invest in Children is, as I did a couple years ago at the 0 to 3 conference, I literally jaws dropped in the room and said, wow, and of course, we all see how much more we want to do, but I am very appreciative of how this community has rallied, and we would love to be able to do more if resources were available. Thank you for the question.
Sounds like not everything that's needed, but more than enough to move the needle.
That's what we're hoping, yes.
Any other questions? Councilman Jones.
One of the initiatives for next year is the community planning initiatives, Promise Neighborhood and P16 Broadway. Can you speak a little about the P16 Broadway and just in general, what dollars are earmarked for either of these projects? Right now for P16, what we've been doing is we've been in meetings with the Third Federal Foundation on an ongoing basis. Most recently, they did provide a grant actually directly to the Literacy Cooperative for the SPARK program, Supporting Partnerships to Assure Ready Kids program, which is an early literacy program. The dollars in that case didn't flow through Invest in Children, but it is under the umbrella of Invest in Children. And I'm sorry, I'm just blocking on which school that's associated with in the neighborhood. That's the clear flow of dollars that has happened there. What we've been told is stay at the table, and hopefully more dollars will be coming. With Promise Neighborhood, we are cautiously optimistic that new dollars will come into the system if that federal grant is received. Invest in Children was cited in the first round of federal proposals, which were planning grant proposals. Some of the feedback that came from the federal grant reviewers was that was Invest in Children and MyCom were two of the real shining spots in our proposal, because we already have systems to build upon to create the Promised Neighborhood in the central area. So we are in the implementation grant, which is in Washington being graded as we speak. Invest in Children is an integral part, and there would be dollars in there back to the Mr. Miller's point, Councilman Miller's point, to really expand home visiting and other pieces in Central. At this point, no dollars have been sent to Promise Neighborhood.
The dollars that have been there have been local dollars. They haven't been federal dollars. I'm sorry, and the Sisters of Charity. Yeah, Sisters of Charity is been putting dollars into it in some of the other foundations, but nothing has come directly through Invest in Children yet.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay, thank you.
We are at 2:45, and we're going to take a 15-minute break and come back at exactly 3 o'clock, and then we can do the remaining two agencies, and we're back on schedule.
I'm not on the committee either, so, you know, but I'm talking to believe so.
Is anybody against it? I don't know.